Welcome to A2B Tracking's web seminar series. My name is Peter Collins, and I'm the founder and CEO of A2B Tracking. So today's focus is on common sense RFID for manufacturers. Now, while we wait for everyone to log in, get settled, we'd like to ask a poll question to learn how many of you have experience with RFID. So we're gonna go ahead and launch that poll, Dave, if you don't mind. So in the meantime, a few housekeeping items. We're gonna be recording the session and we're gonna send it out as a follow-up in an email with a link to that recorded session, as well as the PowerPoint deck. Now we'll also answer questions, but offline, but still get your questions ready, because we're going to be covering a lot of topic here, and just send them over through the Q&A box at any time throughout the session. And the other thing to remember too is, feel free to share this with your colleagues. If you think there's anyone else in your organization, once you get the recorded session, feel free to forward it on. And also recognize that this is not just about RFID for manufacturing only. The principles of this technology can be applied to many different industries, since we know that there's higher education here, that there's government involved in this session. And so we'll be citing examples of how this technology can be used, but there'll be special focus here on the warehouse and on manufacturing environments. So we're going to take a look here in just a moment at the poll results. So right here, based on the response right now, we've got about a fifth of the people involved here. It is part of the daily operations with RFID. That's great. Maybe you're at one stage of implementing, and this will give you a sense of how you can evolve it to the next stage. And that as many as 80% of those involved here that no, they're not currently using RFID at this time. So great, that just gives us the context for getting into the session here. Manufacturers today are struggling with keeping track of the location of their critical assets and inventory of raw materials through to finished goods, and it's killing their production efficiency. Modern RFID technology is rising to the challenge and changing the way manufacturers operate, and the benefits are huge, and the organizations that are getting it right are reaping huge advantages. A mention about our reference to common sense RFID. So we believe there's a misconception in industry that RFID is either too expensive or not practical for ordinary businesses. Now, when leveraging A2B's common sense approach to RFID, the benefits are staggering. Our focus is on RFID that just works in an organization, and manufacturing is one of those places and one of those environments. Let's cover for a moment the agenda. We'll talk about the principles behind RFID and just a quick primer on how it works and the kind of RFID we're going to be focused on today, because there's many different varieties of RFID. We'll talk about how it applies to the manufacturing areas, of course, and how to implement RFID with minimal disruptions. And then we'll also address the parts of an RFID system, because all of these parts need to work together in concert for the RFID system to work and be productive. And we'll look at A2B Tracking's approach to the use of RFID and how to implement it with success. And then I'll address a little bit of bonus content. We call it the common mistakes to avoid with RFID. And then we'll take the questions, as we say, offline and get back to you on an individual basis. So a little bit about A2B Tracking as the messenger. A2B is a pioneer in military-grade, enterprise-class solutions for identifying, marking, tracking, and reporting critical assets. And we've been doing this for more than 25 years. We do this by creating a cloud-based asset management and inventory control platform that incorporates the best of advanced barcode and RFID. With over 8 million assets processed and being used in the platform around the world. But our real goal here is just to turn physical asset and inventory data into unique data that can be easily tracked, inventoried, and audited, as well as reported through to other systems. Now, let's talk about the kind of RFID we're focused on here today. It's as it says at the top, which is passive RFID. So when we discuss passive RFID, we're really talking about battery-free technology. And there are many benefits to passive RFID. So when we talk about passive RFID, we talk about zero maintenance on RFID tags. There's no battery source to power these tags, so no batteries to replace ever over the life of these tags, which could be decades long. This also is the most cost-effective compared to other RFID technologies, and in particular, the battery-powered tags. It's the most versatile because you can apply many different types of tags on different kinds of items that are important to track: asset types, container types, inventory types. And this could be one of the biggest reasons of all that this is the best kind of RFID technology, is that every organization has something different to track that's valuable. And so you might start in an area where you might be tracking contents of inventory that's being transported in corrugated boxes on pallets. And then you may move to fixed assets or other portable assets that move throughout your facility. But what's great is you'll still be able to invoke those kind of RFID tracking capabilities, but without having to go to a totally different kind of RFID to achieve that. So let me give you some example. We work with manufacturers who want to track product assemblies through a production line, as well as in that same manufacturing area, track gauges and calibration tools in that manufacturing area. We also work with rental companies that want to track something like a tents that might move in and out of a facility, as well as tracking industrial equipment being supplied through to construction sites. We work with warehouses that want to track inventory receipts, storage, and eventual shipments. And then we work with IT departments to track laptops, smartphones, and other company-issued IT equipment. So let's go back to the slide a moment and take a look at these three very basic items and think about the tagging required on each of these items. You've got a laptop, a corrugated box, and a Pelican case. When it comes to RFID tag selection, the good news is we have lots of real estate to place an RFID tag. However, each surface is different, requiring and selecting a different kind of tag for the environment it's going in. So for instance, on the corrugated box, an RFID tag is commonly going to be just a single use application for a short duration. So the tag life of the tag that goes on there typically only lasts a couple of weeks, maybe a month. When you look to the right of it, you see the Pelican case. Now, we know Pelican cases are designed to last many, many years. So you're going to need a more durable RFID tag required for that type of container because of the wear and tear. And you want something to be applied and affixed, and so that it lasts many years, if not even a decade or more. Now let's shift our attention to the laptop above. The laptop is a little different because it's designed with metal components. Putting an RFID tag on that kind of surface surrounded by metal components requires a tag with properties that can handle this on-metal application and still get the desired RFID reading performance. So we can go on and on about the varieties of passive RFID tags. Just remember that a tag is not a tag is not a tag. There's no one tag that applies to all surfaces in all cases. So there are hundreds of tags to choose from, and it becomes an integral part of the investment to making this system work for you. And on a last note, always know that whatever tag, passive RFID tag is chosen, it should always be a standards-based tag, one that is EPC encoded, making sure that the tag IDs can all be read consistently from the same readers, and that the data being transmitted is consistently being transmitted back to the database. The other thing to keep in mind too is when we're tagging items, you can put tags both on the exterior of a container, or you can even put them on the physical asset themselves or the inventory and put them inside containers, because there's some benefits to being able to read right through a container to identify an asset inside. So how RFID works. So we've been really kind of dancing around this concept of what exactly is the technology. And the technology is about the use of radio signal to emit from a reader to detect an important item. What we've known from the past is that if you're coming from an environment that uses a lot of barcode tracking, which many environments do, you've got a one-to-one relationship between the item that's doing the scanning, often a mobile computer, and then the item that you're scanning. So you've got that one-to-one correlation. With RFID, it's a game changer because it goes from one-to-one to one-to-many just by pulling a trigger and emitting that RF signal, that radio signal, to the items it's looking to detect. And that radio transmission from the reader can read up to as much as 20 feet or more. And that's going to really be determined by the tag, not only the tag size, but the tag type and the tag application, as I mentioned before. Now, also know that the opposite is true, is that if you choose the wrong tag for the application, or maybe even by design, you might only get 3 to 5 foot read range. So these ranges can vary greatly depending upon the tag you use and the reader you choose. But it can read things through containers like boxes, corrugated boxes, as well as things like Pelican cases. So you want to be thinking through in the design, what is it that you're trying to tag, what business problem are you trying to solve, and what's the outcome that you're looking for? Because you might want to tag the container itself as well, or alternatively, the contents inside. So that's a little bit about how RF technology works. And what's happening here is just when an RF signal is being communicated by the reader, know that it's not only communicating the RF signal to look for the item, but it wakes the specific RFID tag up, and using the power coming from the RF signal, it identifies the item, and then the item responds back to the reader. So that's true of whether you're using a mobile reader or a fixed reader, and even other autonomous mobile readers we'll get into here in a moment. But what areas of manufacturing can this apply to? You can be tracking and tagging items that are coming in bulk, coming in as raw materials to your facility. You can be tracking and tagging items as they go through WIP, either on a traveler tag or on the physical items or even spare parts themselves, as well as through to finished goods. Once you have your nice brand new product ready to ship, it has to go into some kind of packaging phase and go into storage before it's then distributed out the door to wherever the customer site is. We are working today, every day, in and out of healthcare, manufacturing facilities, where we're tracking tools used as calibration for the manufacturing processes in order to track these tools in the calibration schedules that are dependent in order to pass these audits, as well as assigning of items very simply using RF. It's used in an electronics manufacturing environment for the visibility of jobs and how they're moving through the multiple stages of a production process. You know, the other thing to recognize is when this is implemented correctly, those that are implementing it through a WIP application can step back and look at the process too, saying, why is that job just sitting there and going nowhere? And be able to really refine that business process once you have the data to tell you what the story really is and what it's looking like. We work in marine manufacturing environments where the management of customer returns for repair and overhaul and maintenance in a service department becomes crucial. You know, the receipt in and the beginning of servicing, and then the managing of those customer expectations as to when that product that's being serviced, they can come back and pick it up, or it can be shipped back out. We also work in embedded parts manufacturing where there's finished goods being produced, and that availability of inventory for the sales department so that they can know instantaneously what's available for them to ship, to have available to distribute becomes so crucial. And even the consignments of goods in some of the healthcare environments where items are being consigned to shelves inside healthcare facilities before they're actually sold. The tracking and the triggering of invoicing from that kind of benefit is being used with RFID. So let's take a moment to reflect on the different kind of RFID reader options that are at our disposal. We have fixed readers, we have mobile readers, and we have autonomous RFID robots. At this point, I'm going to take just a moment and give you just a quick illustration. A2B has just released an animation video that illustrates all of these technologies together that can be helpful to see for just a moment. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just take a moment. You really will get a sense of the different environments where this animation can be helpful. So as you can see here, somebody coming in with a pallet jack with contents, someone scanning the shelf with RF. And what's really going on here is, as you can see, the fixed reader that sits overhead of the woman who's walking in with a pallet jack load of inventory is directing that almost like a shower head coming down, raining over the contents of the inventory as it's coming in, right? We're not trying to flood the environment like Wi-Fi here. Now, with a mobile computer, again, with a certain read range and a certain radius that it funnels out, you can see the man that's holding the handheld scanner can walk throughout the facility scanning and capturing information. And in this particular case, you can see an AMR that's rolling through a predefined path inside the warehouse that's capturing and cycle counting inventory as it goes. We're going to pop right back into the session here now. So why are manufacturers investing in RFID? One is because of the big benefits of fast and accurate inventory. We know that today maintaining a labor base in this area of the operations is very challenging with the competitiveness for labor. This will allow you to do much more for the accuracy of your inventory and the benefits that are become downstream supply chain benefits without nearly the amount of labor that you're used to with barcode tracking or the manual based counting if you're doing it that way. It also will allow you to find misplaced assets in inventory, not in days or many hours, but in minutes, if not seconds. It'll allow you to control the assignment of important equipment throughout the facility so that as maybe engineering departments, items are getting up and leaving that location, maybe ending up in other areas of the facility, you know within a moment when something has moved in and out of a certain controlled area. It also allows tracking of product ins and outs. So you know when an item is shipped and when that could trigger invoicing with much more real-time accuracy. The other benefit I've mentioned too is this autonomous tracking and the visibility and metrics it gives you into your business process within WIP. This one manufacturer has said once they've implemented RFID into the 15 stages of their manufacturing facility, they didn't know what they didn't know going into it without RFID. Because once this data was there and they could see items moving from one stage to another, they would see that there would be items that would just be sitting there, not moving at all from one stage to the next for sometimes days. And they couldn't do anything about that before because they didn't have that kind of real-time inventory in the past. So why now? Why now? It's because today's business competition is fierce. Organizations are being pushed to move faster and with more accuracy. And then customer expectations are demanding and driving this. The results you'll get out of this technology is a combination of accountability and process improvement. So let's get a little bit more in depth into how the different pieces of the RFID technology work. We're going to begin with the fixed gateways. Now, fixed gateways are nothing more than a network device that connects through your network through to the cloud. You plug it into a wall or a ceiling mounted on brackets, and there's different ways in which you can also use different kind of mounts. You can hang it from a ceiling, or you can flush mount it, as well as use brackets to move and articulate it by the side or over egresses. These are network devices, meaning they're plugged in just using basic Ethernet, and they can be powered over Ethernet. So you don't even have to worry about the use of AC power in and around these devices, although you can use that as well. The idea here is that they identify the item by the RFID tag moving it. As I've mentioned already, you might see that the tag might be on the actual corrugated box, or it might be just on the contents inside these corrugated boxes, and be able to read and identify those things moving through. But not only does it identify the item, but it also identifies the direction that that item is moving. These are directional sensors, or fixed gateways that can tell you when it's moving in one direction or another, which becomes very powerful because it allows you to really narrow down not only where it was last known, but actually the direction in which it was moving for that continuous audit trail. Here's an example of some fixed RFID readers or sensors that are mounted overhead in an office, where they're continuously on emitting RF signal, so that as somebody walks through that facility with tagged items, as you can see are tagged on that rolling desktop or cart, will be captured at the moment's notice. Here's an example of some fixed readers inside the warehouse. Slightly different readers that are set up for wider entries or egresses. Again, these are reading through containers that are non-metallic. But when we take a look at this particular slide, we look at how gateways can be smartly configured and set up inside the facility, so you can really narrow in on what we call a much smaller zone-based approach inside your facility. So rather than tracking an item through a 100,000 square foot facility, you can now narrow it down to 3 or 5 or 8,000 square feet, knowing that it passed a certain choke point. And that's what these red two-way arrows represent, both in and out of the building or between rooms or production areas or warehouses inside the facility. Every time an item passes by one of those red double arrows where one of the fixed RFID gateways has hung, will be captured in the identification of the movement. Again, so we can hone in on zones. And it's the database application that communicates that something has left one area, or you can see the most recent location in which it's exited or entered. So again, we're basing this on last known location with always on asset tracking capability. We're looking at hands-free monitoring as items move with real-time asset identification of that movement. Remember here, we do not need to flood the area like Wi-Fi, like we're used to with Wi-Fi. It only needs to detect items moving past certain choke points. It would be counterintuitive to try and flood an area with this. That's not the goal of this technology. Which brings us to a mention of AMRs. So the autonomous mobile robots, or AMRs, can perform autonomous inventories. They can be set up by predefined schedules to move throughout your warehouse. And as you can see in this particular image, they have 3 RFID readers reading at different angles of attack. You can have them reading lower shelving, middle shelving, and even higher shelving up to 20 feet or more. The idea is so that this eliminates the need for manual or physical labor doing cycle counting throughout a facility. This is not a futuristic perspective of what the technology could do someday. This is now, and this is today, and this is much more affordable than what you could imagine. At the base of this unit is incredibly sophisticated sensors that allow the robot to use the intelligence of what's coming down from the cloud through its Wi-Fi signal, so it could move throughout the facility on a path that's already been predefined throughout the facility. It navigates around obstructions of any kind safely, whether they're things like other fork trucks that might be moving around, or even people or humans that are standing there, maybe pulling something off of a shelf, for instance. But as its cycle counts, it's not only there to detect the item itself, so it can log into the system, its last known location with a date and time, but also exactly the location inside the warehouse where it's detecting that item. These are real technologies happening using passive RFID today. And then the part of RFID in this kind of deployment that's probably the most common that we've seen so far is the use of mobile RFID. Now with mobile, you have two pieces to it. You have the computer that's going to be capturing and transmitting the data back to the host system, as well as the scanner itself with a trigger that's going to allow you to trigger the read of whatever's on the shelf. These two pieces can connect via serial connection. They can connect via Bluetooth between these two devices, but know that whatever's being read off the shelf is communicating back through to the cloud. It can perform physical inventories in seconds rather than hours or days. It can pro-locate, which is a feature that we've built, designed in, that uses the Geiger counter to hone in on that one needle in the haystack that nobody can find and that you're looking for, and that if it has an RFID signal on it, you could walk around the facility and find it typically within minutes. It also has the ability to perform things like fast check-in and checkouts, or what we call groupings in the app, because when you've got equipment that's on the dock that's ready to go out and you want to make sure it's a complete shipment before you go, a grouping can group that order or that job together, and a quick scan can validate you have everything you need to keep that product moving out the door. These are all these technologies are certified with the best in the industry. Zebra Technologies is one of our strongest partners in this area, and we do some work on all these technologies with Zebra and Impinj. So here are the key parts of the RFID system that you need to be thinking about. The first is the RFID tag. We spent a lot of time on that, choosing the right form, fit, and function for the best tag on the best asset or inventory you're trying to track. RFID readers, right? That can come in the form of both fixed gateways or RFID sensors, as well as the mobile computers themselves. Then all of that RFID tag data has to get managed somewhere to get back to the database. And that's what we refer to as the middleware. And that directs the RFID data to the application software. And it's the application software that makes the business sense of the RFID tag reads and the item data. It's to give you the dashboard to see where your inventory levels are or where your assets are at any moment in time. So here is the expert approach to RFID and what you should be seeking to find in a vendor. Really, one is to begin with the vendor asking a very detailed inquiry on the kinds of assets and the kind of inventory that you're trying to track and that you need to account for. And also the detailed workflows as to where items are moving, or the business process that those items that you're trying to support with the use of this technology. It always starts with a problem. And if you can define that problem and you can explain the cost of that problem, then the rest in terms of the way the technology applies will follow. Number two, you need a vendor that can provide the best performing RFID tags among the hundreds of options that are in the industry today. Now, number three is unique in the sense that the vendor should be willing to bring in some of your more shippable or transportable assets into the facility to ensure that the right tag with the right reader is getting the performance you need. We do this at A2B because we want to ensure that whether you're dealing with metal valves that are going into downhole drilling applications, or whether you're dealing with Pelican cases on or tags that need to go on metal containers and deployed into the field, that you're always getting the best performance given the kind of reader technology that's available in the market today. And the third is making sure the vendor is not going to burden with you with making all these technologies work together, because we see too much of that going on. And you need to identify this before you begin implementing in order to get success, because there's a lot of moving parts here. So the result is the fastest path to value. And doesn't everybody want to make the investment and know that they can get the value out of it as soon as possible? It's also the highest probability of success. So we make sure that each of these RFID tag reading scenarios get the performance up to as close to as 100% as you can get before they deploy to the field. The avoiding is to avoid those exposure of mistakes with implementing the technology. The time-consuming nature of trying to figure it out by pulling all the pieces together yourself, and the science project that emerges when you're trying to do that, that becomes incredibly unpredictable. Go with that high value, high probability approach, and you're going to succeed. So what A2B tracking provides? A2B helps you select the perfect tag among the hundreds to ensure the best performance. We provide the installation and the support and all the training necessary with all the hardware and software that we deploy from Zebra Technologies and Impinj. And then we provide our proprietary cloud-based system that can manage both RFID tags with its middleware, as well as our application software that give you that asset management and inventory control dashboard. It is about A2B providing the fastest path to value and the highest probability of success for deploying. I would say that there's no wrong way to start this approach. You can see each of these individual reading technologies in the different environments that they can apply. But what really is important is getting started with something that you can see some initial benefit from. For some organizations, that might be validating shipments going out the door with a mobile computer before it leaves. Others, it might be putting fixed readers between engineering labs to make sure you could track when those engineers need key calibration devices or tools to do their job. You can see exactly where they've moved between the facility. Others, it might be going with an autonomous robot because of the critical requirement for accurate inventory and cycle counting in an extremely tight labor market. Or you could be mixing and matching these technologies. And that's really what happens, is the mix and match of different RFID reading technologies to give you the visibility that you need at the pace that you want to invest in it. So you get to control the amount of investment you make over time. And we see that happen a lot, where organizations may start with just mobile only, for instance, and then 6 months later migrate up to fixed reading or different combinations of those. But it's about real-time inventory and pro-locating and being able to identify using some of those very valuable features in the system. A little more about the A2B tracking platform before I go into the mistakes to avoid. It is secure, it's cloud enabled, and it's RFID and barcode asset management and inventory tracking and reporting from one single system. We make it backward compatible with barcode because we know many environments, it's real world that they need to still continue to process with barcode as well as the use of implementing RFID. But it's anytime, anywhere access, meaning that you can capture, manage, and track your assets and inventory from your desktop, from your laptop, even from mobile devices. It's mobile ready in that you can enable scanning devices, barcode and RFID, for being able to edit detailed data and perform accurate inventory counts. It's asset tracking to a level of speed and efficiency that you've never seen before, with inventories taking up to 30 times faster than over manual processes, and a minimum of 10 times faster than a barcode tracking process. An inventory accuracy of 99% or greater, many achieving up to 100% inventory accuracy, using the latest of asset identification. And if you say to yourself, well, we already have a WMS system or an ERP system, this platform can accept this data and feed it directly through using a modern API to any of those systems that you have running your operations today. This is an all-in-one software platform that does cradle to grave asset management with a full audit trail that keeps you in compliance for any kind of audit that you may be exposed to, whether it's government audits or whether it's manufacturing or ISO audits. So this brings us into some lessons learned here. So we start with mistake number one. We call it oversimplification. So what does oversimplification mean? So many people begin their approach to RFID by oversimplifying the significance of choosing the correct tags to meet the needs and goals of the project. Beware of just going out and just testing a few tags, or worse yet, buying a large batch of tags without identifying how and where they're going to be used and the type of readers that will be required, both in the short term and in the long term. So imagine you wanted to start with a mobile application and you were comfortable with being able to read these assets from 10 or 15 feet. Well, maybe the mobile, you aren't quite getting the read range quite right, and maybe it's a little bit less than 10 feet. That could expose you if you go to introduce RFID gateways or sensors that are going to not be as detectable going through these gateway or sensor areas, because you might need something that's more akin to 15 to 20 foot read range. So you've got to be thinking about the near term and then how this is going to be deployed over the long term and what that means for your ability to get that visibility into where things are at any moment. The second one is what we refer to as scope creep, and that mistake to avoid. So many people start to socialize the benefits of RFID in an organization. Not a bad thing, but it does bring in other departments into the evaluation process. And we've seen this a number of times, where they have a difficult time once you start bringing in multiple departments as to what problem they're solving and which process to use for it to improve. And sometimes it's difficult to manage the meeting of all these demands at once. Here is our recommendation for you, particularly if you're from a larger organization. Hone in on your area of need. Find out where the greatest pain exists and start there first. And then once that process is up and running, then move to the next area. So the last one brings us to number 3, which is the science project. And the science project can be very limiting in 2 ways if you fall into the category of this mistake. I've alluded to it a few times here. Number 1, it's extremely time consuming to sift through all of the RFID tags on the market and to think that you have the right tag, only to then go out and buy a reader, figure out the reader, and then figure out that it's actually not going to meet your needs, which brings you back to the start of the process. There's a lot of time lost and wasted in the science project. But number 2, it actually may end up that you lose faith in the technology and that it will work for you at all. Now you've just missed a huge opportunity, or that you figure out a very time-consuming way to implement it only to limit yourself on the ability to expand it. We were working with a major government agency that had been implementing RFID for the past 4 years. And they were putting tags on thousands of assets using mobile computers to scan them, which was great, right? They had taken that first step. But A2B was not part of this initial effort, and the customer did most of that work alone. So they brought us in because they wanted to expand into fixed gateways and RFID readers that were autonomously reading. But what we realized is that the mobile capture of those RFID tags, as consistent as they were very difficult, almost impossible to be read through these RFID sensors. They had the wrong tag. And the first thing that we had to do is we had to come in with a way that to identify and scope out the right tag for them, make sure it got tested properly, and then got cycled into a new tagging cycle for all these new assets that were being introduced to the system. But it really did delay a lot of things in the way that they rolled out. We did correct it and we got them back on the right track. But ultimately, it just was time and money during that process to do so. So be careful of the science project and how that can impact. And what I want to show you is roll a quick final video here of a manufacturing and service environment in which they're tracking using RFID, both with mobile and fixed gateways, and you can see the results that they're getting. Because what we find here is using videos inside customer environments can really paint a much better picture of the technology. So I'm going to roll that right now.
The North team uses numerous Zebra RFD 8500s. When the North team needs to confirm once a week that all customer assets are on site, a member of the team uses a reader to perform a Florida record inventory, which takes 15 minutes to capture over 600 assets in a 10,000 square foot production and storage area. They also have 2 fixed impinge gateways at the dock door to ensure anything with a tag that enters or leaves through the back door is automatically tracked and recorded with the date and time stamp in the system. When the North team needs to find any customer asset within the facility, they use the A2B app with the 8500 to enter the item ID and use the A2B Pro Locate feature, which uses RF signal to find the asset within minutes, if not seconds. The A2B Tracking software platform empowers North sales to achieve 100% inventory accuracy while significantly reducing labor hours and greatly improving customer satisfaction by eliminating customer wait times during pickups.
So you can get a sense of how the technology was being used there in that kind of environment. You almost notice that with the RFID reader, as you see in my hand, the sort of sweeping motion of being able to read shelving both lower and higher as they go throughout. But as a result of being able to capture over 800 important assets in a 15-minute period was a major, major achievement. Where they weren't even able to inventory all the items because things were using manual process because things were coming and going with such frequency inside the facility. So this gave them visibility that they had never had before, and their customer service responsiveness and the satisfaction of customers on that end had gone through the roof as the use of the technology. And just to add a little bit more benefit, fixed readers by the receiving dock allowed things to move in and out of the facility while autonomously being read and captured to know when something actually left and maybe ended up going into a truck for delivery, as a for instance. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how the technology is operated in these environments. The one thing that I'll recap here with you is be focused on the use of the technology and how you can achieve not only that first step, but the fastest time to value of the technology, and also the highest probability of success. You want to make this technology work for you and not become a science project. And think about A2B tracking as common sense RFID in our approach. I appreciate your time here. Feel free to ask questions and send them over, and we can get them back to you offline. And if you would like to talk to any of our RFID solution consultants or specialists to talk more deeply about some of the particular nuances, even if you've begun the RFID journey or you would like to, just initiating that phone call could get that process rolling for you as well. Appreciate the time and I look forward to hearing from you later on.